Our topic is on basic pharmacology, the drugs of abuse. There are three groups that belongs to this topic. This one is the drugs that activate the GI-coupled receptors, which includes opioids, cannabinoids, gamma hydroxybutyric acid, and lysergic acid. Second group are drugs that mediate their effects via inotropic receptors, which includes nicotine, benzodiazepine, alcohol, ketamine, and phencyclidine, and inhalants. And the last are drugs that bind to transporters of biogenic amines, which includes cocaine, amphetamines, as well as the ecstasy. Here is the table of the different drugs that I mentioned, together with their main molecular target, as well as the pharmacology and its effect on the dopamine neurons. If you look on the last column, the relative risk, it's either 1 to 5. And when we say that the relative risk is 1, meaning that the drug is non-addictive. And on the other hand, if mataas ang kanyang relative risk at 5, which means that the drug is highly addictive. So, an agent's the relative risk for addiction correlates with heritability. So, for instance, it is more likely that the offspring of a cocaine addict will inherit the addiction rather than the offspring of one who is addicted to marijuana. Kasi if you look at the relative risk of cocaine, that is 5 and that's the highest, and compare mo naman sa cannabinoids, that is only 2. But the genes that is involved in the development of addiction has not been identified. And since all addictive drugs increase the dopamine concentration in target structures of the mesolimbic projection, they are classified on the basis of their molecular targets and the underlying mechanism. So yun na nga yung na-mention ko kanina on the different groups. The first group that contains the opioids, cannabinoids, your gamma hydroxybutyric acid, which exert all their action through the G1 protein coupled receptors and causes the disinhibition of the dopamine neurons. While yun namang second group, that includes the nicotine, alcohol, benzodiazepine, the dissociative anesthetics, and some inhalants. And these drugs interact with the inotropic receptors or the ion channel. So, ang kanilang mechanism are quite mixed. Ang last group, so this comprise of cocaine, amphetamines, and ecstasy. These all bind to the monoamine transporters, which lead to increased dopamine level regardless of their effect on the neuron firing. And the non-addictive drugs, such as the hallucinogen, are classified using the same criteria. Let's start with the drugs that activate the D1 coupled receptors. First is opioids. This drug may have been the first drug to be abused in human history, and still, this belongs to the most commonly used for non-medical purposes. And these opioids are natural or exogenous ligands that includes or that binds to the three opioid receptors, the mu, the kappa, and the delta. Although these three receptors are coupled with the inhibitory G protein, meaning that they all inhibit the adenyl cyclase and activate the potassium channels. These are the activity of the opioid receptors. You have the mu, the kappa, and the delta. They have a distinct and sometimes even opposing effect, mainly because of the cell type specific expression throughout the brain. Like for example, in the VTA, the mu opioid receptors are selectively expressed on GABA neurons, so meaning they inhibit this. Whereas the kappa opioid receptors are expressed on and inhibit dopamine neurons. So this may explain why the mu opioid agonist causes euphoria or the feeling or state of intense excitement and happiness, Whereas in kappa agonist, it induces dysphoria, which is the state of unease or generalized dissatisfaction. Because if you will compare the activity on both the mu and the kappa, they are almost the same, from the analgesia, meiosis, sedation, constipation, respiratory depression. What makes it different is on addiction, that is more of the mu receptor and psychomimetic effect that is present in the kappa receptor. But the common on both mu, kappa, and delta, they are for analgesia. The most commonly abused mu opioids includes morphine, heroin, codeine, and oxycodone. The heroin, these are the diacetylmorphine, which is rapidly metabolized to morphine. While your synthetic opioid fentanyl, this is very potent synthetic opioid, and this drug is within minutes can be saturate or can saturate the opioid receptors at a dose of 100 times lower than morphine. And this is very widely abused primarily because of its rapid onset and ease of distribution. And because of this pharmacokinetic property, it is among the most dangerous drugs and accounts for many deaths by overdose. While your meperidine, or also known as the pethidine, ito naman, these are commonly abused by health professionals kasi it is easily accessible. And all of these drugs induce strong tolerance and dependence, which increases the risk of transition to addiction by negative reinforcement. This is what I'm telling you earlier, that the GABA neurons expressed are inhibited by the mu opioid agonist. And inhibitions of the GABAergic inhibitory interneurons that causes this inhibition of the dopamine neurons. So meaning, mas madami ang lumalabas na dopamine, thus, it can cause euphoria. On the other hand, ang kappa opioid receptors naman, it inhibits the dopamine neurons express. That's why it produces dysphoria. Let's now look at the withdrawal of opioids. So the withdrawal syndrome may be very severe except for codeine. And it includes intense dysphoria, nausea and vomiting, muscle aches, lacrimation, rhinorrhea, mydriasis, piloerection, sweating, diarrhea, yawning, and fever. And beyond the withdrawal syndrome, which usually lasts no longer than few days, only few individuals who have received opioids as analgesic to treat acute pain will develop addiction. How do we reverse the problem? So the opioid antagonist, your naloxone, this reverses the effects of opioid rapidly, but this is only given for life-threatening overdose. Very seldom na ginagamit siya to treat addiction because as its rapid reversal can precipitate severe withdrawal. So in the treatment of the opioid addiction, methadone, buprenorphine, and extended-release morphine sulfate, these are the longer-acting opioids. This is often substituted for the shorter, more rewarding opioid, and that is the heroin. So heroin is a short-acting drug which induces more euphoria. But for substitution therapy, methadone is given orally once daily, and that is facilitating supervised intake. So this is given for heroin addicts under close supervision. Your levomethadone, a preparation containing only the active enantiomer, has similar kinetics and effects as methadone, but slower side effects, particularly when cardiac repolarization is perturbed, your long QT interval in the ECG. While the use of your buprenorphine may be limited by the withdrawal symptoms that is observed at the beginning of the therapy. And this buprenorphine and the much longer half-life methadone, your extended release morphine sulfate, and may also have some beneficial effect. But it is important to realize that abrupt termination of methadone can also precipitate withdrawal syndrome. So that is the subject on substitution therapy remains dependent. Endocannabinoids are called retrograde messengers because they are released postsynaptically and bind to their targets, the CB1 receptors, which are located presynaptically, thereby inhibiting the release of glutamate or GABA backward. So that is the so-called backward signaling. And these are the two agents, your 2-arachidiol glycerol and your anandamide. While the exogenous is a powerful psychoactive substance that is contained in commonly used abuse drug, and that is marijuana. That is your tetrahydrocannabinol. The relative risk is 2, and its mechanism is also presynaptic inhibition of your VTA GABA neurons, thereby causing disinhibition of the dopamine neurons. The half-life of your tetrahydrocannabinol is 4 hours, with the onset of action coming within minutes of smoking and reaching its peak after 1 to 2 hours. The onset of effect of your tetrahydrocannabinol after smoking marijuana occurs within minutes again, and its maximum is 1 to 2 hours. And the most prominent effects are euphoria and relaxation. Other effects of cannabinoids are listed before you. So, users report that there are feeling of well-being, grandiosity, and even altered perception of passage of time. And there is the so-called dose-dependent perceptual changes. So that is the visual distortion. Also, drowsiness, diminished coordination, and memory impairment that may occur. These cannabinoids can also create a dysphoric state. Diba? Sabi nga nung iba, parang ano ba yan? Bad trip. Minsan ganon. And in rare cases, following the use of a very high doses, especially in hashish, this can result in visual hallucination, depersonalization, and even frank psychotic episode. The additional effects of your THC includes the increased appetite, attenuation of nausea, decrease in the intraocular pressure, and relief of chronic pain. That's why, kaya nga masyadong naging familiar ang cannabinoids. It's because of its medical therapeutic, especially the last four. The appetite, the nausea, the ocular pressure, and the chronic pain. But that makes the cannabinoid as a medical marijuana because of these purposes, itong apat na to. And chronic exposure to marijuana can lead to dependence, which is revealed by a distinctive but mild and short-lived. These are the withdrawal syndrome that includes restlessness, irritability, mild agitation, insomnia, nausea, and cramping. So, this marijuana can be used as a stepping stone for the user to try a more dangerous illicit substances. Kasi nga mas madaling ma-acquire, no? So, but eventually, what will happen, nag-a-acquire sila ng mas mataas na klase ng dangerous drug. And of course, it has the potential to precipitate a psychotic attack, and these are the ones who are predisposed to schizophrenia. Kaya makikita mo among cases dun sa National Center for Mental Health, marami dun ang merong history of drug of abuse, na particularly with the use of simple marijuana. No, so that this is a very common medical history that is present among these patients. So kapag ka nag-intern kayo and you have the chance to rotate in the National Center for Mental Health, marami sa kanila ang merong merong history ng use of these drugs of abuse. In this slide, you can see the different brain structures and the one that it regulates. And on the third column, you will look at the effect of your tetrahydrocannabinol on a user of this drug. Like the effect of panic and paranoia in amygdala, the basal ganglia for slowed reaction, the brainstem for the anti-nausea effect, the impaired coordination, the cerebellum, the memory that is for hippocampus and hypothalamus for the appetite, the neocortex for the altered thinking, judgment, and sensation, euphoria or the feeling good with the nucleus accumbens, and the spinal cord for the altered pain sensitivity. For the treatment of cannabinoids, the FDA-approved cannabinoid analogs treat this addiction and dependence but are more useful as an antiemetic, and that includes your dronabinol and your nabilon. The third drug that belongs to the group is the GHB or the gamma hydroxybutyric acid. This is first marketed in France as an anesthetic, and it is odorless, so easily dissolves in liquid and is rapidly absorbed in the GIT. And this GHB, it has a narrow therapeutic index and has a potential for addiction. That's why it has been removed in the market. This is very popular as a popular club and date rape drug. And this is a drug that has a peak plasma level that is achieved in 20 minutes after an intake of 10 to 20 milligram per kilogram per dose. The half-life of this drug is 30 minutes. The drug can lessen the daytime somnolence, and it has been used under restricted condition to treat narcolepsy and cataplexy because it can decrease the daytime sleepiness, and it can also decrease the episodes of cataplexy. Yun yung mga nagkakaroon ng sudden loss of involuntary muscle movement while the person is awake. And before causing sedation and coma, your GHB causes euphoria, enhanced sensory perception, and the feeling of social closeness and amnesia. That's why this drug is very popular as a club drug because that goes by a colorful street name such as your liquid ecstasy, your grievous bodily harm, or your date rape drug, or your club drug. And as the latter name suggests, the GHB has been used as its property is odorless, and it can be easily dissolved in beverages. So kaya nga siya tinawag na club drug kasi kalimitan makikita mo yan sa mga party. Okay? So the GHB is a product of GABA metabolism in the body, but the function of the endogenous GHB is not known. There are two binding sites, but its pharmacologic action are mediated only by binding to one of this, and this is the GABA B receptor. Looking at this slide, your gamma hydroxybutyric acid is dose dependent on its effect, no? And if you look at the last item, it is synergistic, has a synergistic effect when combined with alcohol. Kaya nga party and then gagamit ka nitong mga liquid na ecstasy. That's why the overdosage is increased if you really combine this with alcohol. This figure shows the disinhibition of your dopamine or the DA neurons in the ventral tegmental area or the VTA through the drugs that I mentioned. Your opioids, your THC, as well as your GHB. And these are the drugs that act on the GI coupled receptors. So looking at the top figure, MOR stands for mu opioid receptors. Of course, VTA is for ventral tegmental area. GABA, your gamma aminobutyric acid. So, what is the target of the opioid? So, opioids target the mu opioid receptors or the MOR that in the VTA are located exclusively on the GABA neurons. Your MORs are expressed looking at the picture on the presynaptic terminal of these cells, and the second is on the somatodendritic compartment of the postsynaptic cell. So each compartment has, of course, has a distinct effectors. Your G-protein beta-mediated inhibitors of the voltage-gated calcium channel or your VGCC is the major mechanism in the presynaptic terminal. And conversely, in dendrites MORs, that will activate the potassium channels. So together, the pre- and the postsynaptic mechanism that will reduce the transmitter release and suppress activity, ultimately taking away the inhibition by the GABA neurons. This makes it different naman on the target ng tetrahydrocannabinol, nasa middle figure. And the target is mainly through the presynaptic inhibition. While at the bottom, that is the target of your gamma hydroxybutyric acid, and this targets the GABA B receptors, which are located on both cell types. However, the GABA neurons are more sensitive to GHB than are the DA neurons. So that will lead to the disinhibition at concentrations that is typically obtained with recreational use. The last drug that belongs to the group are the so-called hallucinogens. So, when we talk of hallucinogens, ito yung mga drugs that has the ability to alter the consciousness or even affect the consciousness such that the user perceive non-existent things. So, ito yung mga nakakakita ng hindi mo nakikita. So, this may have a heightened or distorted perception of reality, even the object or the color. So, the drugs can cause a psychosis-like manifestation like depersonalization, hallucination, distorted time perception. So that's why they are the so-called psychotomimetics. And they exert the psychotomimetic effect such that the individual has out-of-body experiences and has a distorted time perception. So these drugs induce, often in unpredictable way, the perceptual symptoms, including the shape as well as the color. And as I said, psychosis-like manifestation is also present, and the somatic symptoms such as dizziness, nausea, paresthesia, blurred vision, and some of the users may re-experience perceptual effect or those na nagpa-flashback. No? So, wag mong ibibigay ito kung may utang ka sa kanila kasi magfa-flashback yan because this will experience this even several years after the last drug exposure. And the relative risk of these hallucinogens is quite low as a number one, or one is the relative risk of these drugs. These hallucinogens differ from other drugs in that they induce neither dependence nor addiction. However, repetitive exposure still leads to rapid tolerance, the so-called tachyphylaxis. And several studies have shown that these drugs also fail to stimulate dopamine release, further supporting the idea that only drugs that activate the mesolimbic dopamine system are addictive. So instead, hallucinogens increase the glutamate release in the cortex via the presynaptic serotonin receptors. So that is your 5-HT2 alpha and beta from the hypothalamus. And resolution of the 3D structure of the LSD-bound 5-HT2B receptor that can reveal an unusual attachment mode, and that explains the slow kinetic of this molecule. LSD, or the lysergic acid, is an ergot alkaloid which, when taken regularly or orally, it can induce psychoactive effects within 30 minutes and has a duration of 6 to 12 hours. The prominent feature is loss of judgment, and during this time, the subjects may have impaired ability to make rational judgment and understand common dangers, which put them at risk for accidents and personal injury. LSD is not considered neurotoxic, but like most ergot alkaloids, this can lead to abortion, or it can induce abortion because this can lead to strong contractions of the uterus. The target molecule of this hallucinogen again is a 5-HT2A, and that is a G protein link receptor, which when activated releases the inositol triphosphate, which causes the increase in the intracellular calcium. So again, this receptor couples with G protein of the GQ type, generates the inositol triphosphate, or your IP3, and that will lead to release of intracellular calcium. Moving on, the second group of drugs. So these are the drugs that mediate their effects via the inotropic receptors. Let us start with nicotine. Nicotine is among the most addictive drugs with a relative risk of 4. And relapse after attempted cessation is very common. Nicotine addiction has the highest over the substances in terms of number of affected individual, primarily because of the smoking. So in addition to this, nicotine addicts who are either chew or snuff tobacco, but that snuff tobacco is also addictive. And based on the nicotine enhancement of cognitive performance and the association of Alzheimer's dementia with the loss of acetylcholine releasing neurons from the nucleus basalis of Maynard, the receptor, your nicotine acetylcholine receptors, are believed to play an important role in many cognitive processes. So this drug is a selective agonist of the nicotine acetylcholine receptor, whose natural ligand or normally activated by acetylcholine. This receptor is involved in many higher cognitive processes, just like what they believe in the study, and they are expressed in dopaminergic neuron in the VTA, hence the rewarding effects of nicotine. So again, activation of this receptor by the drug causes the release of dopamine in the nucleus accumbens and prefrontal cortex. Hence, the substance has an addictive potential. Symptoms of withdrawal from nicotine is mild, and this is characterized by irritability and sleep disturbances. But others may experience headache or inability to concentrate, or there may be intense nicotine cravings, no? So these are the reasons of the withdrawal symptoms of for this nicotine. Kaya lang minsan parang nagiging psychological, no? I think it's just a matter of discipline on how you wanted to quit from smoking. Sabi nga, kung gusto, may paraan, pero kung ayaw, maraming dahilan. So, sige, let's just look at how we can treat the nicotine addiction. And they believe that the treatment of this addiction includes the nicotine itself in the form that are slowly absorbed, and there are several preparations, no? like gums, inhalation, PATs, no? These are the strategy that involves a switch to a slowly absorbed formulation. They have a slower kinetics and reduce the exposure to toxic substances that emanate from the smoke tobacco. Your cystine and vareniclide are the plant extracts and are partial agonists of your nicotine receptors on dopaminergic neurons in the VTA. And when these extracts occupy the said receptor, they prevent the nicotine action. The last drug is an antidepressant, your bupropion. So bupropion is an antidepressant that is recognized as a smoking cessation aid and is also used for the nicotine addiction therapy. But of course, the most effective and way of treating is when this quitting all in the smoking habit is coupled with behavioral therapy, because that makes it a successful treatment for this nicotine uh, addiction. Next is the benzodiazepine. So these are the commonly supplied as anxiolytic and sleep medication. These popular anxiolytic and sleep agents are among the commonly used drug with other substances such as alcohol. And some person with benzodiazepine uses it or abuse it because of the euphoriant effect. But most often, abuse occurs concomitant with other drugs, that is to attenuate anxiety during the withdrawal from opioid. And sometimes they have superseded the barbiturate in terms of the prescribed outpatient utilization. So, where is the action of these drugs? So, benzodiazepines are positive modulators of the GABA A receptor, increasing both the single channel conductance and the open channel probability. Your GABA A receptors are pentameric structures consisting of alpha, beta, and gamma subunits. So GABA receptors on dopamine neurons of the VTA, they lock the alpha 1, which is a subunit isoform that is present in GABA neurons nearby. That is the interneurons. And because of this difference, unitary synaptic currents in interneurons are larger than those in the dopamine neurons. And when this difference is amplified by benzodiazepine, the interneurons fall silent. So GABA is no longer released and benzodiazepine lose their effect on dopamine neurons, ultimately leading to disinhibition of the dopamine neurons. So the reward effects that underlie the benzodiazepine addiction involves the GABA A receptor in the VTA dopaminergic neuron, and specifically the GABA A receptors which contain alpha A or alpha 1 subunits. The rewarding effect again of this benzodiazepine are mediated through the alpha 1 containing GABA A receptors that is expressed on the VTA neurons. The receptors containing the alpha 5 subunits seems to be required for tolerance to the sedative effect of benzodiazepine. And in benzodiazepine, dependence is very common, and the diagnosis of addiction is probably often missed. They represent a definite risk for abuse, which has to be weighed against their beneficial effect, and the relative risk of benzodiazepine is 3. Withdrawal from benzodiazepine occurs within days of stopping the medication, and this varies as a function of the half-life of elimination. Symptoms include irritability, insomnia, photophobia or phonophobia, and even depression, muscle cramps, and seizure or convulsion. And typically, these symptoms taper off or it usually resolves within 1 to 2 weeks. Next drug is ethanol. This widely used and abused sedative hypnotic has an anxiolytic and euphoric effect even at low to moderate amounts. It is a water-soluble with a rapid absorption at the GIT with a peak serum level that is attained within 30 minutes of ingestion at the fasting state, but slower if with food due to delayed emptying time. Kaya nga 'di ba, sabi, kung gusto mong uminom, kumain ka muna, no? Pero depende yan sa iinumin mo kasi kung hard ang iinumin mo, mas maganda na may laman ang tiyan mo. And that will delay the emptying time. Pero kung siguro birang iinumin mo, kung masyadong kakain kasi ilalabas mo rin yan. No? Because the distribution of this ethanol is rapid, no, the tissue level soon equilibrates with that in the blood. Okay, so the level is about 0.5 to 0.7 liter per kilogram. That is similar to the total body weight. And the CNS level also elevates fast due to large blood flow to the area and the ability of the alcohol to cross the blood-brain barrier. So that's why madaling pumupunta sa utak. Kaya lang, sabi nga, kapag iinom, ilagay lang sa tiyan at huwag ilalagay sa utak. Look at this slide, no? Ang sabi, men versus women, they are not equal when alcohol is involved. No? Looking at this, having an equivalent oral dose of alcohol, women have a higher peak concentration than men. Bakit? Because women have a lower total body water content, and in part because of the differences in the first pass metabolism. Kasi their activity of the enzyme may be different sa mga babae compared sa mga lalaki. That's why mas madaling malasing. Parang hindi naman yata pumapayag yung mga babae. No? But look at the figure, no? After 30 minutes, yung alcohol content ng mga babae are quite higher in 0.0 to 7 compared sa mga guys, which is around 0.018. And as the number of hours increases, no, mas malaki ang diferensya ng mga girls compared sa mga boys. No? Sabi nga, yung alcohol content, because of the difference again ng total body water content and the enzyme that is involved in the first pass metabolism. Okay, metabolism, 90% by oxidation, hepatic, 10% by lung metabolism. So, in the liver, through oxidation, and that follows the zero-order kinetics. So, meaning that the rate of hepatic oxidation of ethanol is constant regardless of time and concentration. And the typical rate in adult is 7 to 10 grams per hour. And the typical rate of alcohol in one drink, so that is around 300 ml of beer, and that is about 105 ml of wine, and 30 ml of a distilled 80 proof spirit. So, yung inyong percent of alcohol, the amount of alcohol in the body per hour is around 150 to 220 millimole of alcohol per hour with all of those drinks that I mentioned. And the excretion of a small but consistent proportion of alcohol is by the lungs. And that can be quantified by breath alcohol test. So kaya nga ginagamit yun, di ba, as a driving influence or driving, ang tawag nila is DUI or driving under the influence. No? And there are some legal implication of this alcohol breath test. So, again, the remainder is excreted through the lungs, and that can be measured by an alcohol breath test and even in the urine. The pathway in the alcohol metabolism, there are two major pathways, the alcohol dehydrogenase pathway and the microsomal ethanol oxidizing system pathway. So let us look at them one by one. Color blue is the alcohol dehydrogenase metabolism. So this is the conversion of ethanol to acetaldehyde, and this is the main metabolic pathway of alcohol, which involves the alcohol dehydrogenase that catalyzes the conversion of alcohol to acetaldehyde. So these enzymes are chiefly in the liver, but some are present in the brain and stomach. Because there are genetic polymorphism for alcohol dehydrogenase, there are variation in the rates of metabolism and vulnerability to effects of alcohol amongst races, no? Kaya nga sabi, 'di ba? Bakit yung isa mas malakas uminom, yung isa hindi pa nalalasing, 'di ba? And this is an example of those in the East Asian, no? One ADH allele, particularly your ADH1B2, which is associated with rapid conversion of ethanol to acetaldehyde. And this has been found to be protective against alcohol dependence in the ethnic population, no? Kasi nga mas madali silang malasing, kaya kalimitan kokonti sa kanila ang alcohol dependent, no? And some of this, as I mentioned, metabolism of ethanol by ADH occur in the stomach in men, and smaller amounts occur in women, no? Kasi nga nabanggit kanina, because of the low levels of gastric enzyme, no? So aside from the body water, the total body water na pinag-uusapan, the reason why these women are magkaiba ng peak concentration compared with men, that's the reason, no, the enzyme that is present in the stomach. So the difference in the gastric metabolism of alcohol in women, that will contribute to the sex-related differences in blood alcohol concentration that I mentioned earlier. And looking further on the figure, during the conversion of your acetaldehyde, the process causes the transfer of a proton or the hydrogen ion from ethanol to cofactor NAD or your nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, forming the reduced product NADH. So excessive level of your NADH adds to the metabolic abnormalities in chronic alcoholism and the hypoglycemia and lactic acidosis in acute intoxication. And the second pathway, or the MEOS pathway, or the CYP450 enzyme, so this enzyme system, also known as the mixed function oxidase system, uses your NADPH as a cofactor in the metabolism of ethanol and consists primarily of cytochrome P450, 2E1, 1A2, and 3A4. So, chronic alcohol use induces activity of this MEOS, causing the faster clearance of other drug which are substrate of this enzyme, as well as formation of toxic byproducts of your CYP450 reaction. So that is with your free radical, your hydrogen peroxide, and other toxin. Now, the third arrow is the one in green, the acetaldehyde metabolism. And acetaldehyde is then mainly oxidized in the liver by the catalyst action of your NAD-dependent aldehyde dehydrogenase, or your ALDH, that will eventually form an acetate which is then converted to carbon dioxide and water or to acetyl-CoA. Your oxidation of acetaldehyde is inhibited by disulfiram. So this drug, your disulfiram, is used to deter drinking by patients with alcohol dependence because this disulfiram inhibits the aldehyde dehydrogenase, causing the accumulation of your acetaldehyde. So this produces an untoward manifestation, no, with facial flushing, nausea, vomiting, headache, and dizziness. Kaya nga hindi mo pwedeng i-combine ng alcohol like with metronidazole, cefotetan, and even trimethoprim. Primarily, ini-inhibit niya itong acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. So what will happen? Anong mag-a-accumulate? Acetaldehyde. So anong mangyayari kay patient? The untoward manifestation of facial flushing, nausea, and vomiting. So ito yung tinatawag nila na disulfiram-like reaction. If these drugs like metronidazole, cefotetan, and trimethoprim is combined with ethanol. Some people, primarily the East Asian, as I mentioned earlier, have a genetic deficiency in the activity of your mitochondrial form of ALDH. So that is the one encoded in ALDH2 gene. So with these individuals drink alcohol, they develop a high blood acetaldehyde concentration and experience a noxious reaction similar to that seen with the combination of disulfiram and ethanol. So itong mga East Asian descent may experience the accumulation of your acetaldehyde primarily because they lack this or they have a genetic deficiency of this activity of the mitochondrial form of your ALDH. So this form of reduced activity, ALDH, is of course strongly protective against alcohol use disorders. So what are the CNS effects of acute ethanol consumption? So at low level, okay, sedation lang and anxiolysis, no? But when you increase the blood alcohol concentration to around 100 to 200, meron ka ng impaired motor function, no? Iba ka nang magsalita, you have a slurred speech. At pagpupunta ka na sa CR, medyo gumigewang-gewang ka na, so you have an ataxia. And if you increase further, no, you may have an impaired judgment. Ito na, disinhibited behavior, nagwawala na. And more so, kung 200 to 300, baka mamaya nagtutulak ka na ng pader at nagtatawag ka na ng uwak because you are experiencing emesis and stupor. No, and more than that is quite dangerous because 300 to 400 blood alcohol content can lead you to coma, and more than 400 can have a respiratory depression and even death. Okay? So, hina-hina lang, no? Sabi nga, drink moderately. The action of alcohol, so this affects the activity of both GABA and glutamate. So these are the major inhibitory and excitatory neurotransmitter of the brain. So acute exposure enhances the action of GABA mediated via your GABA-A receptor. So GABA mimetics can augment many alcohol effects, while GABA antagonists can weaken them. So acute ethanol exposure enhances the action of GABA at the GABA-A receptors, which is consistent with the ability of the GABA mimetics to intensify many of the acute effects, and the opposite, the antagonist, to attenuate some of the actions of the ethanol. This ethanol inhibits the ability of the glutamate to open the cation channel associated with your NMDA subtype of glutamate receptors. So, anong ginagawa ng ethanol? It inhibits the glutamate action on NMDA receptors, which mediate the cognitive function. The NMDA receptors is implicated in many aspects of cognitive function, so that includes learning and memory. So blackouts or the period of memory loss that occur with high level of alcohol may result from the inhibition of the NMDA receptor activation. Kaya nga yung iba, 'di ba, minsan ano ba nakakalimot, nawawala, hindi na niya maalala kung ano ang nangyari nung gabi, no? The so-called blackouts or memory loss. So these are the periods when you have a very high or high alcohol concentration. So you have to be careful. And long-term alcohol consumption, however, decreases the GABA-A receptor alpha-1 subunits in the brain, which in turn raises the dopamine levels. Okay, so again, the effect of this alcohol, so it affects the activity of both GABA and the glutamate. What is its effect in the heart? So ethanol is a vasodilator, no? So both CNS effects as well as a direct smooth muscle relaxation caused by its metabolite acetaldehyde. And in some cases, in the smooth muscle, it causes vasodilatation. That's why in severe overdose, it can cause hypothermia, no, and may be marked in the cold environment. And ethanol as well relaxes the uterus. And this was used before the introduction of the safer uterine relaxant. Ginagamit itong alcohol to suppress the premature labor, no? But of course ngayon hindi na 'yun ang ginagamit, hindi na po pwede because of the advent of the new agents like your CCBs or your calcium channel blockers. Okay, what about the chronic alcohol consumption? So ito na yung mga singilan on a different system. And liver is primarily the one that is affected. Fatty liver that may progress to cirrhosis and liver failure. The risk daw of liver diseases is related again to women who to be more susceptible to alcohol hepatotoxicity than men. And remember that this fatty liver that may progress to cirrhosis, and again, end niya is liver failure. Cirrhosis that may lead to an elevated portal blood pressure and esophageal and gastric venous varices. Even chronic hepatitis, gastritis, and protein malnutrition. And the concurrent risk actually of infection with Hepa B and Hepa C. So that again increases the risk of severe liver diseases. Yung varices naman earlier that I mentioned may also result into massive bleeding. And this may contribute to the protein malnutrition. And of course, the average amount, no, of this problem may depend on the daily consumption and of course to the duration of alcohol abuse. The consumption of this alcohol in high doses over long period results in tolerance and even physical and psychological dependence. Why tolerance? Tolerance to the intoxicating effect of alcohol. This is actually a complex process that will involve the changes in the nervous system as well as the pharmacokinetic changes. And with other sedatives like the hypnotic drugs, there is a limit to tolerance so that only a relatively small increase in the lethal dose occur with increasing alcohol use. And these chronic alcohol drinkers, when forced to reduce or discontinue alcohol, they will experience a withdrawal syndrome, which indicates that the existence of the physical dependence. Alcohol withdrawal symptoms usually consist of hyperexcitability in mild cases. So that's around 6 to 8 hours after alcohol consumption is stopped. And the worst is seizure and toxic psychosis and delirium tremens in severe ones. So that is during the first 5 days of withdrawal. So the dose, the rate, and the duration of alcohol consumption will determine the intensity of the withdrawal syndrome. And when consumption is a very high, that is merely reducing the rate of consumption, that may lead to signs of withdrawal. The psychological dependence of alcohol is characterized by a compulsive desire to experience the rewarding effects of alcohol, and for current drinkers, a desire to avoid the negative consequences of withdrawal. People who have recovered from alcoholism and become abstinent will still experience period of intense craving for alcohol. So that can be triggered, of course, by peer, by family, no? Yung mga kainuman mo dati, ayan na sila at bumabalik. So, this alcoholism, no, may be experienced again once there are some environmental cues or some environmental factors that will trigger it. The molecular basis of alcohol tolerance and dependence is not really known, no? But the tolerance may result from ethanol-induced upregulation of a pathway in response to continuous presence of ethanol, while dependence may result from overactivity of that same pathway after the ethanol effect dissipates and before the system has time to return to a normal ethanol-free state. Okay, what else is the effect on the nervous system? Consumption of this large amount of alcohol over extended period of time, no? So usually taon yan. That will often lead to neurologic deficits. And the most common neurologic abnormality in chronic alcoholism is a generalized symmetric peripheral nerve injury. And that begins with distal paresthesias of the hand and feet. Degenerative changes can also result in gait disturbances and ataxia, and even other neurologic disturbances associated with alcoholism. So that includes dementia and rarely the demyelinating diseases. There is an uncommon entity, your Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. This is an important entity characterized by paralysis of the external eye muscles, ataxia, and a confused state that can progress to coma and death. This actually is associated with thiamine deficiency, but rarely seen in the absence of alcoholism. So kalimitan, itong mga Wernicke-Korsakoff na to is related really to alcoholism. And because of the importance of thiamine in this pathologic condition and the absence of toxicity associated with thiamine administration, all patients suspected of having this WK syndrome should receive thiamine therapy. And often the ocular signs, ataxia, confusion will improve after the administration of thiamine. However, most patients are left with chronic disabling memory disorder, and that is the so-called Korsakoff psychosis. So again, these are the effects of chronic alcohol consumption in the nervous system. Chronic alcohol consumption, what is its Role in cardiovascular. So, heavy alcohol consumption of long duration. This is related to dilated cardiomyopathy with ventricular hypertrophy and fibrosis. So, based on the studies, alcohol causes cardiac membrane disruption or a depressed function of the mitochondria and sarcoplasmic reticulum, or intracellular accumulation of phospholipid and fatty acid. And lastly is the upregulation of voltage-gated calcium channel. And the heavy drinkers, especially the binge drinking, they are associated with both atrial and ventricular arrhythmias. So patients undergoing alcohol withdrawal symptom or syndrome may develop this severe arrhythmia that may reflect abnormalities of potassium or magnesium, and this is enhanced release of catecholamine. So even seizure, syncope, and sudden death during alcohol withdrawal may be due to this arrhythmia. So these are the effects of chronic alcohol consumption in the cardiovascular, cardiomyopathy, and fibrosis, as well as both the atrial and ventricular arrhythmias. A link between heavier alcohol consumption, so that is more than 3 drinks per day, and hypertension has been firmly established in epidemiologic studies. And alcohol is estimated to be responsible for approximately 5% of cases of hypertension, independent of obesity, salt intake, coffee drinking, and cigarette smoking. But this alcohol is believed to improve or actually prevents from the coronary heart disease, ischemic stroke, and even peripheral artery disease. So that is with moderate alcohol consumption. And the reason that they gave is that ethanol has the ability to raise or increase the level of your high density lipoprotein cholesterol. And it can also increase or has the ability to inhibit some of the inflammatory processes that underlie atherosclerosis. And it also increases the production of your endogenous anticoagulant, your tissue plasminogen activator. And lastly, by the presence of the some alcoholic beverages like red wine, so it contains now the antioxidants, your resveratrol and ellagic acid. So this is somehow protective against the atherosclerosis. Although these observational studies are intriguing, but the RCTs examining the possible benefit of moderate alcohol consumption in the prevention of coronary heart disease have not been carried out. Alcohol indirectly affects the hematopoiesis through metabolic and nutritional effect, and may also directly inhibit the proliferation of all cellular elements in the bone marrow. And the most common hematologic disorder seen among chronic drinkers is mild anemia. And this is related to the folic acid deficiency, or the so-called alcohol-related folic acid deficiency. Iron deficiency may result from gastrointestinal bleeding. And this alcohol has also been implicated as a cause of several hemolytic syndrome, and some of which are associated with hyperlipidemia and severe liver diseases. In the endocrine system, clinical reports of gynecomastia and testicular atrophy in alcoholics with or without cirrhosis that will suggest a derangement in the steroid hormone balance, as well as the metabolic derangement caused by metabolism of large amount of ethanol that can result into hypoglycemia. And this is due to the impaired hepatic gluconeogenesis and in ketosis caused by the excessive lipolytic factors, especially with increased cortisol and growth hormone. And individuals with chronic liver disease may have disorders of the fluid and electrolytes, so that can cause ascites, edema, and even effusion. And alteration of the whole body potassium that is caused by vomiting and diarrhea, as well as by severe secondary aldosteronism that will contribute to muscle weakness and even worsen by the diuretic therapy. During pregnancy, the chronic maternal alcohol abuse may cause some teratogenic effect. And the alcohol is a leading cause of mental retardation and congenital malformation. And this syndrome is the so-called fetal alcohol syndrome, which include growth restriction, microcephaly, and poor coordination, even under development of the midfacial region. So that is the flattened face, the appearance of the flattened face, and minor joint anomalies. And in more severe cases, it can affect the heart by having the congenital heart defects and mental retardation. Although the level of alcohol intake required to cause serious neurologic deficits appears quite high. So ito talaga sa mga lasenggang nanay, no? Na alam na nilang buntis sila and yet umiinom pa sila ng alcohol. So this may result into the so-called fetal alcohol syndrome. So these are the subtle neurologic deficits or some of the problems that is present among babies with a mother who is alcoholic. So flattened face may be evident as well as microcephaly. So maybe during this pregnancy they are growth restricted and there are some minor joint anomalies. So these are examples of the fetal alcohol syndrome. The immune system is also affected, the lungs and the liver. And in the lungs, there is suppression of the function of the alveolar macrophages, inhibition of your chemotaxis of granulocyte, and reduced number and function of T cells. While in the liver, there is an enhanced function of key cells of the innate immune system and increased cytokine production. And chronic alcohol use increases the risk of cancer of the mouth, pharynx, larynx, esophagus, and liver. And even evidences points to small increase in the risk of breast cancer in women. And its primary metabolite, the acetaldehyde, that can damage the DNA, as can the reactive oxygen species produced by increased cytochrome P450 activity. So other factors implicated in the link between alcohol and cancer includes the changes in the folate metabolism and the growth promoting effects of chronic inflammation. Now we move on the alcohol drug interaction. So this is with chronic consumption and acute consumption. The chronic consumption of alcohol may induce the hepatic cytochrome P450 enzyme. And that is with regard to the particular drug, your acetaminophen. And chronic consumption of 3 or more drinks per day increases the risk of hepatotoxicity. And that is due to toxic or even high therapeutic level of acetaminophen. No? So again, this is due to the increased P450 mediated conversion of acetaminophen to a reactive hepatotoxic metabolites. On the other hand, acute alcohol can inhibit metabolism of other drugs. So, because of a decreased enzyme activity or a decreased liver blood flow, so this includes your phenothiazine, your tricyclic antidepressants, and your hepatic sedative hypnotic drugs that are the most important drugs that interact with alcohol by this pharmacokinetic mechanism. Intoxication with alcohol, its pharmacology is complex, and there is no single receptor that mediates of all of this effect. And on the contrary, the alcohol alters the function of several receptors and cellular functions. So that includes your GABA A receptors, your KIR3, GERK channels, your glycine receptor, your NMDA receptor, and your 5-HT3. So they are all, with of course exception of your ENT1, either inotropic receptor or an ion channel. Though it is not clear with this target that is responsible for the increase of dopamine release from the mesolimbic system. So as I mentioned, the inhibition of your ENT1 is probably not responsible for the rewarding effects, but seems to be involved in the alcohol dependence, and that is through these theories, through your accumulation of adenosine, through the stimulation of your adenosine A2 receptors, and ensuing enhanced CREB signaling. How do we manage the acute alcohol intoxication? So, our treatment objective is to treat the intoxication by preventing a severe respiratory depression and aspiration of vomitus. So, the average blood alcohol concentration in fatal cases, as what I have shown you earlier, is more than 400 milligrams per deciliter. But of course, the lethal dose of alcohol will vary because of the varying degree of tolerance. Electrolytes is very important, as well as the metabolic imbalances such as your hypoglycemia. So better administer this or correct this problem by the administration of glucose. And thiamine can be given to protect against your Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. And people who are dehydrated and vomiting should also receive electrolyte solution. And if vomiting is so severe, large amount of potassium may be required to correct the renal function and to bring that back to normal. Management of alcohol withdrawal syndrome. So prevention of seizure, delirium, and arrhythmia are the major objective of this drug therapy. And maintain the electrolyte balance. So meaning the potassium, magnesium, and phosphate balance must be restored as rapidly as is consistent with renal function. And thiamine therapy is initiated in all cases of withdrawal syndrome. Individuals in mild alcohol withdrawal do not need any other pharmacologic assistance, but specific drug treatment for detoxification is warranted in more severe cases. And of course, that involves two principles, the substituting and tapering. Substituting, meaning substituting a long-acting sedative hypnotic drug for alcohol, and then gradually tapering or reducing the dose of the long-acting drug. So because of this wide margin of safety, benzodiazepine is the preferred. So long-acting benzodiazepine, that including your chlordiazepoxide and diazepam, have the advantage of requiring less frequent dosing. So since their pharmacologic active metabolites are eliminated slowly, the long-acting drugs will provide a built-in tapering effect. So this benzodiazepine may be orally administered in mild or moderate cases or parenteral for patients with more severe withdrawal reaction. So the detoxification has a two principle, that is substituting, no, substituting with a long acting and tapering of this drug. However, the disadvantage of long-acting drug is that they and their active metabolites may accumulate, especially with patients in compromised liver function. So this is when the shorter acting drugs like your LORA and your oxazepam that is rapidly converted to inactive water soluble metabolites that may not be accumulate, no, so that's the reason that they may be useful in patients who are alcoholic and suffering from liver diseases. Your alcohol withdrawal, so after this has been treated acutely, sedative hypnotic medication must be tapered over several weeks. So as to achieve the complete detoxification, of course, because this will take few days, no, of alcohol abstinence, and sometimes several months may be required for restoration of the normal nervous system, especially sleep, no? So yun ang naaapektuhan in cases of this withdrawal syndrome. Management of alcoholism, so this is addressed by rehabilitation program and psychotherapy. So either that can be performed as an inpatient or outpatient. So this involves counseling and of course the judicious use of your pharmacologic agent that will also tackle the problem of depression and anxiety. So the combination approach is as yet the most effective means to prevent the relapse. And there are three drugs, no, the pharmacologic adjuncts. This includes your naltrexone, which is a long-acting opioid antagonist that blocks and reverses the opioid effects that is mediated by the mu receptor at the mu receptor. So once daily, either oral or intramuscular for in extended release formulation on a once a month. But this should be used in caution in cases of an elevated liver enzyme or liver diseases because of its potential for hepatotoxicity. So because of this drug is not combined with another hepatotoxic adjunct, and that is your disulfiram. Administration of your naltrexone is started only when patient is opioid free to avoid the withdrawal symptoms, and this which can be quite severe in opioid addiction. The second drug is acamprosate, a drug that has an effect on GABA, glutamate, serotonergic, noradrenergic, and dopaminergic receptors. These are weak NMDA receptor antagonists and a GABA A receptor activator. So it has been shown to be comparable to naltrexone when combined with psychotherapy in reducing the relapse rates. So this is an enteric coated, administered thrice a day, and best to be given in an empty stomach. And despite of its poor GIT absorption, this is widely distributed and excreted via the kidney. The problem here is sometimes reported side effects of nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and rashes. And among patients who have severe renal compromise should not be given this acamprosate. And the third drug, which is very seldom used today to treat alcoholism, is disulfiram because this is less effective and compliance is low. And of course, when taken with alcohol, disulfiram rapidly causes the untoward manifestation, as I mentioned earlier. And the episode lasts for about half an hour, but it may take several hours in severe cases. So that's why this has been less used in the treatment of this alcoholism. There are other drugs that may be applied, like your anti-seizure agents, your topiramate, your gabapentin and valproate, as well as a GABA B agonist. The drug is baclofen. The next drug belongs to the classified as club drugs, and they are sold as the Angel Dust, Hog, and Special K. And because they are use dependent and non competitive antagonism of the NMDA receptor, the effect of these substances becomes apparent when the patient undergoing surgery reported unpleasant, vivid dreams and hallucination after anesthesia. And if you look at the preparation of these drugs, they are white crystalline powders, but on the street they are sold as liquids, capsule, and pills. They are snorted, ingested, injected, and smoked. So, what is the effect of these two drugs? So, as I mentioned, this can have an unpleasant vivid dream and hallucination. So, looking at this patient, no, kapag ka nasa recovery room ka, at kung ano-anong sinasabi ng pasyente, if you look at the chart, most probably during the time that this patient had the surgery, nabigyan siya ng ketamine, no? Kasi nga, very unpleasant ang hallucination ng mga pasyenteng ito. Psychedelic effects last for about an hour, and it also includes the increase in the blood pressure, even impaired memory function and visual alterations, no? Pero paggising nila, hindi nila naalala yung mga sinabi nila, no? That's the problem with this drug. And at high doses, unpleasant out-of-body and near-death experiences has been reported. No, parang ayaw mo na, no? Kasi parang you can experience the bad thing when you receive the high doses of this ketamine. Both drugs does not cause dependence and addiction. Kasi ang looking at the relative risk is just one, no? But chronic exposure, particularly your phencyclidine, can lead to long-lasting psychosis. And that is closely resemble that of schizophrenia, which may persist beyond drug exposure. And surprisingly, intravenous administration of ketamine that can eliminate episodes of depression within hours. And in strong contrast to selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors and other antidepressants, which usually takes weeks to act. No? If you look at the mechanism of action, this antidepressive mechanism is believed to involve the antagonism of NMDA receptors. So, thus favoring your mTOR pathway downstream of other glutamate receptor. And the metabolite of your ketamine, your hydroxynorketamine, may actually target AMPA receptor to exert the antidepressant effect. So, recent findings suggest that ketamine dampens the activity of neurons of the lateral habenula, and that leads to the disinhibition of your VTA or your ventral tegmental area. Inhalants abuse is defined as recreational exposure to chemical vapors such as nitrites, ketones, aliphatic, and aromatic hydrocarbons. So ito yung mga nasa bahay, the household and industrial products that are present. No? That may be sniff or huff or bug, or there's a bugging. So when we talk of sniffing, ito yung mga is the inhalation from an open container. And huffing naman is soaking a cloth in a volatile substance bago niya i-inhale, and bogging, so this is breathing in and out of a paper or plastic bag, no? Madami niyan if you are when we were in Moraita, no? When we go out of the street in Moraita, makita mo yan yung mga bata, they are holding a certain plastic, no? And um, they are bagging this different inhalants, no? Kasi nga they are readily available. No, sabi nga nila um, this drug, no, that is available, that you can just buy, no? Uh, and they are using this, no, as a form of recreational vapor that is present in the streets of in Manila especially. Okay, so your other drug, the other inhalants like your nitrous oxide, so that binds to your NMDA receptor, your fuel additive that will enhance the GABA A, your toluene will increase the excitability of the VTA, and your poppers, no, your amyl nitrite. Are you familiar with the poppers? So these are the smooth muscle relaxation and that can enhance erection. So here are some of the routes of how are these inhalants is used. So either sniffing, spraying, bogging, no? Common yan yung rugby, di ba? Mga rugby boys. Huffing and inhaling. Last group of drugs. These are the drugs that bind to transporters of biogenic amines. Let us start with cocaine. And this is a highly addictive. Oh, look at the relative risk. It's 5. And its use is associated with a number of complications. This alkaloid that was found in the leaves of your Erythroxylium coca, so which is a shrub indigenous to the Andes, is water-soluble salt that can be injected or absorbed by any mucosal membrane. So, kaya nga yung iba ginagamit siya snorting, nasal snorting. And when heated in an alkaline solution, it is transformed into a free base, the so-called crack cocaine, which can then be smoked. So, inhaled crack cocaine is rapidly absorbed in the lungs and penetrates swiftly into the brain, producing an almost instantaneous rush. No? So, kaya kung makikita mo merong sinusunog, no, at merong sinisinghot, so these are the forms of methods on how this drug is prepared. So these are some of the patients that I got from the internet, no, and looking at them, their picture even few months after the use. And this one naman, on the other hand, are the quitters. So ito yung mga nagbalik loob, no, on how they look like before and after they have discontinued the drug. The action of cocaine in the CNS, so this drug inhibits the transporter so that the dopamine or epinephrine and even serotonin do not undergo reuptake. So the rewarding effect comes about because of the increase in the dopamine in the nucleus accumbens. So that will result from the dopamine transporter blockade. And it also involves the inhibition of the norepinephrine transporter that causes an increase also in the norepinephrine and causes a sympathetic activation. So it's more on the reuptake of these neurotransmitters. So what are the acute effects? No, so it's not just the dopamine, but it also involves the norepinephrine transporter blockade. So that's why anong effect? So activation of the sympathetic nervous system. So that can cause an acute increase in the arterial pressure. It can cause tachycardia and often ventricular arrhythmia. And sometimes the users will typically lose their appetite. They are hyperactive with the sleep that is little. And the worst is when you have a cocaine exposure, they are increasing the risk for intracranial hemorrhage, ischemic stroke, myocardial infarction, and even seizure. And overdose can lead to hyperthermia, coma, and death. Susceptible individuals may become dependent and addicted after only a few exposures to cocaine. So, yun na ang problema. Konting tikim lang, eto na. Meron ka ng addiction, meron ka ng dependence and tolerance that will occur. Although the withdrawal syndrome is reported, it is not as strong as that observed with opioids. But tolerance may develop. But in some users, a reverse tolerance is observed. That is, they become sensitized to small dose of cocaine. And this behavioral sensitization is in part context of dependent. Cravings are very strong and underlie the very high addiction liability of cocaine. But to date, there's no specific antagonist available, and the management of intoxication remains supportive. No, and developing a pharmacologic treatment, of course, for cocaine addiction is a top priority. The next group of drug are synthetic, indirect acting, sympathomimetic that induces release of dopamine and norepinephrine. So these are the endogenous biogenic amines. And together with your GHB or your gamma hydroxybutyric and ecstasy, amphetamines are considered or often referred to as club drugs because they are increasingly popular in club scene. And how do you acquire this? Either orally, snorted, and injected. Tolerance is possible with chronic use. And hardcore addiction is far more common with amphetamine, especially with your methamphetamine. What's its action or what is the amphetamine action? These are substrates of these transporters that are taken up into the cell. And once in the cell, amphetamine interferes with the vesicular monoamine transporter or the VMAT. And what is the effect? It will deplete the synaptic vesicle of their neurotransmitter content. And the consequence, what will happen is that the level of dopamine or other transmitter amine in the cytoplasm will increase. And what it does, it quickly becomes sufficient to cause the release into the synapse by a reversal of the plasma membrane DAT. So what are the effects of amphetamine? So amphetamine leads to an elevated catecholamine. So what will happen? So there is hyperactivity, increase in arousal, reduced sleep, even tachycardia, arrhythmia, and hypertensive, and the worst are strokes. Whereas the effects of dopamine system, that will mediate euphoria and abnormal movements and can precipitate the psychotic episodes and even neurotoxicity. And this drug, amphetamines, are neurotoxic. Although the exact mechanism is not known, but neurotoxicity depends on the NMDA receptor and affects mainly the serotonin and dopamine neurons. And what about the effect on serotonin with elevated serotonin? So this may play the role for hallucinogenic and anorexogenic function as well as hyperthermia that is often caused by this amphetamine. Um, Other effect can either be or related to this amphetamine use is the spread of HIV and Hep B infection, no, because of the needle sharing when they are using this methamphetamine. Withdrawal with amphetamine may consist of dysphoria, drowsiness, or even insomnia and general irritability. The last drug in the group is the methylene dioxymethamphetamine, or your MDMA, or the ecstasy. So this is a amphetamine derivative that was initially tried in psychotherapy because of its effect that is fostering feeling of closeness and empathy, no, but later discontinue for the lack of the medical advantages. So again, the main effect of ecstasy appears to be foster feeling of intimacy and empathy without impairing the intellectual capacities. And how do you use your ecstasy? So this is by oral route. And this is distributed in the parties or raves. So ecstasy, therefore, is the prototypic designer drug. So kaya nga siya, ang tawag is designer pill because this is increasingly popular now. Its mechanism is similar to amphetamine, no? But it has a preferential action on the SERT or the serotonin transporter. So what it does, it causes the significant increase in the level of serotonin, the extracellular level of serotonin, and depletion of its intracellular level for 24 hours. And that is after following a single dose. Okay? So, nadideplete ang intracellular, ang nag-i-increase ay extracellular level of this serotonin. And again, similar to amphetamines, MDMA can cause a release of the biogenic amine by reversing the action of the respective transporters. And with repetitive administration, it may lead to permanent depletion and neurotoxicity. So, again, repetitive administration, serotonin depletion may become permanent, which has a trigger actually of a debate on its neurotoxicity. So, this repeated doses, permanent intracellular depletion, and that can cause the neurotoxicity. There are some evidences of the irreversible brain damage races concerning this, and that is, of course, the social use of this drug. What are the acute effects of ecstasy or MDMA? No, nag-iinit sila. They are having hyperthermia. And along with that is dehydration, di ba? Kaya nga sila, ano ang hawak nila? Hindi sila umiinom ng alak. Ano ang hawak nila? Bote ng tubig. No? Because they are dehydrated. And that may be fatal, no? That can be a life-threatening condition, no? Kasi nga pag na-dehydrate ka because of this, it's a problem. So, there are other complications that may be observed like the serotonin syndrome that may cause the mental status change, autonomic hyperactivity, and the neuromuscular abnormalities. Drug can also use that may lead to persistent elevation of this extracellular serotonin, and it can also cause your tremors and even rigidity, no? With a large amount, so ang problem, water intoxication, hyponatremia. Seizure and even death has been reported in some users due to ingestion of large amount of fluid to compensate, of course, the elevated body temperature. So be careful with this because this can cause death. What about withdrawal with this MDMA or the ecstasy? Withdrawal is marked by a mood offset, no, that is characterized by depression, no, lungkot-lungkutan na si ate, that will last for several weeks. And there may be reports of an increased aggression during the periods of abstinence among the chronic ecstasy user or your MDMA or your methylene dioxymethamphetamine. There are three groups that belongs to this topic. This one is the drugs that activate the GI-coupled receptors, which includes opioids, cannabinoids, gamma hydroxybutyric acid, and lysergic acid. Second group are drugs that mediate their effects via inotropic receptors, which includes nicotine, benzodiazepine, alcohol, ketamine, and phencyclidine, and inhalants. And the last are drugs that bind to transporters of biogenic amines, which includes cocaine, amphetamines, as well as the ecstasy. So before I end, I would like to thank Dr. Jessica Cruz for sharing her notes regarding this topic.